Good evening, everyone. Let's call the March 2nd, 2021 Heritage Preservation Commission meeting to order. Liz, could you please lead us in a roll call?
Yep. Commissioner Davies.
Present.
Coleman.
Here.
Mueller.
Here.
Place.
Here.
Welbert.
Here.
And Chairperson St. John.
Here. Good. Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda for tonight? And could we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Steve. A second.
I'll second.
Scott seconds it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries to adopt the agenda. That moves us to item 4 on the agenda, the visitor presentation. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that'd like to speak about something that's not already on the agenda?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, now there's no response, so we'll move on to item 5, approving the previous HPC minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes that Liz sent us? Okay.
Yep.
Could we get a motion to approve, please?
Davies.
And a second? Who's that, Scott?
I'll second.
Oh, thanks, Christine. All in favor to approve?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, the motion carries to approve the minutes from December 1st, 2020. And that moves us on to item number 6, which we have a couple of items under discussion, which are items that do not require a formal motion or action on. However, they warrant discussion for our group. Liz, would you like to start us off, please, with the first item, 6A?
Yep. Thank you, Chairperson St. John. I just wanted to kind of segue into these items. Like Chairperson St. John said, these are items that do not require formal action from us. So we're not making any motions tonight on either of these. They just are discussionary items. The first one that I'll turn over in just a second here is regarding the Highway 41 and County Road 61, also known as Chaska Boulevard improvements project. So we have a couple consultants here from Bolton and Mink to talk about this project. So I'm not going to talk about it too much. I'm going to turn it over to both Jamie Ladwig and Angie Bursa. I believe Angie is going to be doing a presentation for us. We did send the material out about a week ahead of what we normally do for our packets, just to give you some time to look over the material. But we're also going to have Angie kind of discuss and share her screen on the project itself, so that you guys are very clear on kind of what they're requesting from you tonight, or if you have any questions on the project, we have the appropriate people here to kind of answer those questions and gain any of those comments or questions that you have in regards to it tonight. So Angie, feel free to take it away. Let us know if you're having any troubles sharing your screen. It doesn't look like it, so that's good.
Right, thanks, Liz. I am just gonna get this up here. All right, well, thanks for having us. I'm Angie Bursa with Bolton and Mink, and I have my coworker here with me, Jamie Ladwig, and she's gonna jump in a little bit later in the presentation. I have a little bit of history. I did work on the study that led to the design that's now kind of working its way through the detailed design back in 2017. So happy to be back in Chaska again and talking with you all about this project. What we wanted to do tonight was just give a brief project overview. I know that in the packet you did get many of these upfront slides I'm going to share, but I thought it might be helpful to kind of walk through all of the different elements of the project, and certainly we're here to answer any questions about that. What we're hoping to walk away from tonight is a better understanding for us of the items that, you know, we need to be keeping you guys in the loop on. You know, what are the items for this committee's coordination? Jamie's going to get into some details about cultural resources and some of the historic property assessments that are underway. And then we'll kind of wrap up with where we go next. So can everybody see my full screen? I see you all on the right-hand side, so I just want to make sure I'm not blocking anything from your view.
I see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, this is really a very simple map, and I have some more detailed figures we'll walk through, but project area is shown in yellow. So basically Highway 41 as we enter Chaska over the Minnesota River through the downtown, and then to just north of the intersection of 61 or Chaska Boulevard and 41 up to approximately Walnut Court. And then we also have a segment of Chaska Boulevard that will also be under reconstruction. I'll talk about what's planned on both of those roadways, but along the left-hand side of your screen are some of the other items. You know, this is really much more than just a road project. This is really about kind of tying and stringing together some of the city's plans dating back to 2012 with the downtown master plan. And, you know, how do we better balance vehicle movements and the pedestrian environment with the vibrant, you know, historic district and character that that downtown has. So it, you know, we'll definitely be improving the roadways, but also looking at, you know, how can we accommodate parking off of Highway 41 into some public parking lots? And then what do we do with the extra space that we gain from pedestrian environment? Obviously wider sidewalks are good for safety and things like that, but there's also an opportunity to do some streetscaping or, you know, landscaping and wayfinding. And then this project also provides many opportunities to improve the pedestrian crossing environment as well. How do they get across 41? We have some enhancements to that are both at grade and what we call grade separated or a tunnel under 41. And then of course, you know, since you don't get an opportunity like this to reconstruct a road except every 30, 40 years. So, you know, the city's really taking this opportunity to update the utilities and make sure everything's in good shape here. So I just have a series of 4 slides that kind of break the project apart, just talking through it as we walk from the riverside through downtown. So the main thing that's on this screen is really just adding a median on to 41. And the reason for that is to try to start having people realize they need to slow down as they enter downtown. You know, the medians, they do allow an opportunity potentially for some landscaping. That's to be figured out yet, but really to just get people to realize, hey, I'm entering a downtown, I should slow down. And really that does then transition from the 2-lane section that's south of the river into the main improvement in the downtown area, which is transitioning from the 4 lanes that are there today to what we call a 3-lane. So 1 through lane in each direction plus left and right turn lanes at the intersections. We still have signals where they are today at 2nd Street and 4th Street in this view. And with this, we get wider sidewalks, wider crossing areas where people, if they need to cross Highway 41 in 2 phases, are able to. And then this picture just shows, you know, something from the study phase a couple of years ago, which you probably have seen already, just kind of visualizing what that reuse of that space can look like. I will note that the landscaping and trees and things that are shown in here, that's all of the details that we now need to figure out. This was sort of a best guess rendering of sorts, but now is really the time to figure out what goes in that space and how does it look. So then as we keep moving to the north, I did want to point out, it was kind of covered up in the past slide, but something that we are looking at and was in your packet is how do we, there will no longer be on-street parking on 41. That was sort of a trade-off of, you know, getting everything to fit in the space that we have. So how do we accommodate parking in downtown through other locations? And this image shows some of the future parking locations that were identified in the 2017 study. I will say that, you know, the discussions with property owners and where exactly these parking areas go is what we are trying to figure out right now. We just wanted to kind of get this on the radar of this committee, because if it's within the boundaries of the Walnut Street District, and Jamie will talk about this in a little bit, we certainly want to be coordinating and we'll be looking closely at that. So this, again, just where we left off from 2017. Another thing, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this tonight, but something that we're investigating with our project is, I'm not sure if you've all heard about paseos. So it's a way to talk about the alley spaces behind this first block, basically, of 41. And so we're looking at different opportunities to make some connections. Should it be for vehicles or just pedestrians or both? And how do we, you know, there's a lot of buildings that have rear entries into their businesses. How do we, if there's parking back here, make this an attractive and environment for being and spending time in downtown? And moving north, so now we're still facing the same way. This is the 41 and Chaska Boulevard intersection. This line through here is showing, there's an old rail bed property through here, and we are showing a pedestrian underpass. So going under Highway 41 and then kind of daylighting out on either end to make a trail connection for people getting across and through, and connections to other trails in the area. So that is a major component of the project. And then as we move north on 41, continuing that median and providing some sort of enhanced pedestrian crossing here at Walnut Street and 41, probably at grade, not a tunnel, but how do we get people, there's a demand for people trying to cross to Fireman's Park. And then finally, the last kind of element I haven't touched on yet is Chaska Boulevard itself. So on this picture now, north is facing up, and this is kind of the Brickyard area. So we do know that with the lanes we're adding and what we're expanding here on 61 or Chaska Boulevard, we are having a median come through here. Yellow Brick Road will be open. Walnut Street will remain signalized like it is today. I just wanted to point out that the 2017 plan had some other local road improvement ideas shown on here. This project is really taking a look at that. Probably won't include that extensive of local road improvements off of the system here, but we are working closely with some property owners to figure out access and how best to make that work with the city. So that was just a really quick overview, and I'm sure we can go back to any of those elements as we go, but I did want to turn it over to Jamie to talk more specifically about the cultural resource work she's doing and some of the assessments we're doing with historic properties.
Yeah, I just want to start by saying thank you so much for allowing us to join you tonight. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Perfect. So yeah, I'll just launch right in. Obviously in downtown Chaska, as I'm sure the members of the committee are aware, that there are many cultural resource concerns, not just historic buildings, but also, you know, potential archaeological properties and other more sensitive resource types. So coordination for the environmental review aspect of this project, including cultural resources and historic properties, began in December 2020 with MnDOT's Cultural Resources Unit. So essentially they're MnDOT's reviewers for projects that have archaeological historic properties components. And in their capacity as the lead agency, they are delegated to start conversations with other agencies regarding projects. So as I stated, MnDOT Cultural Resources Unit, CRU is the acronym for that, initiated consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO, the Office of the State Archaeologist, OSA, the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council, MIAC, and tribal historic nations located within Minnesota and other nations that are outside of the state that do have interest within this area in particular, and within more Minnesota more generally. These are referred to as Tribal Historic Preservation Offices, or the acronym is TIPOs. We anticipate an on-site meeting with all of these partners moving forward, particularly before we get into some pre-construction ground disturbing activities, and I'll talk more about that at my next point. So ahead of project construction and to inform design, one of the subconsultants working on this project with us is hoping to obtain some geotechnical soil borings, again, to inform design, particularly where we have that proposed pedestrian underpass underneath Trunk Highway 41. We know that there are those sensitive resources within this area, so we've been working closely with CRU, and they have been distributing information to agencies regarding that pre-construction activity. So a memo was distributed for parties to review, recommending monitoring of some of those proposed boring locations and allowing others to occur where we know that there aren't previously recorded historic resources. There's been a significant amount of disturbance through time, and we're not concerned with the borings in those locations. So that memo has been reviewed, the review comment ended, and those borings in the locations that are not recommended for monitoring are anticipated to occur beginning fairly soon in March, with a second mobilization of those locations that are recommended for monitoring. So if we're looking at that figure on the right hand side of the screen, we have the soil test boring locations noted by the red dots, and then those proposed monitoring areas that are shown with that red overlay, again, corresponding to known sensitive cultural resources. And next slide. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, Angie, could you go back one? Also ahead of project construction and to inform anticipated monitoring recommendations of project construction in 2022 and 2023, we are proposing what's called a burial site assessment, and that will be within City Square Park and proximate to the proposed construction limits for the project. In 2019, a geophysical survey, a non-invasive survey, was conducted by a subconsultant in City Square Park and within the boundaries of a recorded archaeological site in coordination with OSA and MIAC. And their results identified some anomalies within the park. So the nature of those anomalies could be anything from past utility, subsurface utilities, to potentially cultural features. So some of those anomalies were not as well defined and could represent potential activities relating to the past use of that area. So not just historically, but thinking pre-contact as well. So the idea with the burial site assessment is to take small diameter probes about 1 inch in diameter to investigate those anomalies, as well as the areas where those anomalies don't occur, to further inform the interpretation of that geophysical survey. So what is the nature of those anomalies? And then based upon that, do we have reason for concern that these features might extend within the project area? And if so, that data will further inform design as well as recommendations for the project. And next slide. As part of this investigation, we will also be looking at historic properties with the potential to be impacted by the proposed project. Coordination with CRU to date has recommended that this project will likely follow the path of that 2017 alignment. So the project has changed in scope, but in terms of an area of potential effect, those effects are anticipated to be limited to physical modifications of buildings. So whether it be demolition, modifications to the exterior of the building, based upon the nature of the project, mostly ground level. There's not a consideration of what's called an indirect APE or visual impacts associated with the project. So those potential impacts are more likely going to be relegated to physical modification of buildings. So as Angie had noted earlier, the location of those proposed parking lots is somewhat in flux, but we're exploring a few different possibilities, and there's a few structures that might be demolished that are technically within the boundaries of the Walnut Street Historic District. The Walnut Street Historic District was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1978, and most nomination forms of that time don't include great guidance of whether or not all properties within those recorded boundaries are what are called contributing elements or are significant to that historic district. So ahead of project construction and as part of this project, a subconsultant is going to be conducting a historic building review of those locations where we have buildings that are 45 years or older with the potential to be impacted by the project. Many of these structures have been previously inventoried, and there's a record of that inventory within state site files that reside at the State Historic Preservation Office. But I believe for all of these structures, there wasn't a recommendation made or a determination made of National Register eligibility. So that study will speak to that potential National Register eligibility of these properties. If they're found to be eligible, then we need to take additional steps to either minimize, mitigate, or otherwise work through that potential adverse effect to those properties. And next slide. So another such property that might be subjected to physical modification is located at 210 North Chestnut Street. Again, this is one of the properties that has been previously inventoried, but for which there's not a recommendation or determination of eligibility. So we'll be revisiting that property based on this potential change. And that potential change is based on a modification to an exterior stair that's attached to the side of the building and provides access to the residences on the second level. And that potential change would accommodate a sidewalk connection to the parking area that is potentially going to be located in the rear of the building, and will accommodate that Paseo design. And next slide. And on the right hand of your screen, you see that staircase that's going to be proposed to be modified. So it might take the form of a separated structure or a cantilever. Depends moving forward what comes out of that conversation. This particular property owner has not been approached about this, but again, we just wanted to get in front of your committee and talk about these potential modifications. So out of that historic properties review, if this building is determined to not be eligible to the National Register, we know that it is locally designated by the city of Chaska. So just wondering how to work through that process. And next slide.
And I might just add one thing here. So in terms of all of these different properties where we're using a lot of words like may or could or, influx, we're working through the direction of the city that, really anything we do would need to be with a willing property owner, that we are not going down a path of condemnation of any sorts. And so that's why, that we were moving from that idea phase to reality phase, and we'll have to work through those discussions. We certainly would want to make sure that the upstairs residents still have access, and that's where these options that Jamie's talking about, we think we can do that and still accommodate a sidewalk connection, but lots of details to work through there.
Great, thanks for adding that. Yeah, and another potential design modification. This is the rear of the building. Some of the options that are being explored right now might require changing the access to the building as shown in the right-hand image. So it's quite steep at the moment, probably is already not allowing vehicle access today. But again, just another design modification that we'll need to work through as we continue to explore options for this particular project. And next slide. And the Chaska Mill, Angie had pointed out how we have that pedestrian walkway that's going to be accessible underneath the trunk highway 41, and that walkway will kind of feed out right in front of this historic building, Chaska Mill. Again, this is a building that has been previously inventoried, but there hasn't been a determination of eligibility made for this. So that potential entrance modification would again require review as part of the historic properties review.
Yeah, and I might just add a few words on this. So the issue here is that, we're crossing under, right at the bottom of the screen, you're under Highway 41, and then you're sort of gently climbing up back to street level or ground level. And we really don't get to ground level until right where this green ends, so right about here. And that on this picture, that's probably, you know, somewhere in this area. So the pink is showing a sidewalk, right? Where we have designed a sidewalk because we need an accessible path back to that building. We could probably build in some stairs through the retaining wall area to get there, but we do need this sidewalk path. And so the thought was, well, if this pink sidewalk is here, would there be interest, or what if there was just an additional stairway here to this building, kind of like what's over here, but, you know, would we make people walk all the way back and up? And so again, just sort of that idea phase, but another property that we wanted to make sure you all were able to weigh in on process-wise. Anything else on that slide, Jamie?
That's all I had.
Okay. So then before we wrap up our section of the presentation, just wanted to talk generally about the schedule. We are moving fast with trying to get our project footprint set. So what are the major elements that are sort of in the project? And that's where I said some of these discussions with property owners regarding the parking lots, they're underway. We haven't had a discussion with that North 10 Chestnut, but you know, that will be happening soon. Really trying to get that set within the next month or so. We know that there might be a little bit of flux in that too, but really trying to move fast to set the footprint so that we can begin the detailed design phase. As you can see, that does take quite some time to work through all of the different details and the environmental documentation phase. There is federal money, so we're following federal regulations. It does take some time. The goal though is that with the funding that is tied to this project, we are getting to construction starting middle of next year, so July of 2022. We don't know yet how exactly construction would be staged or phased. We do know that it would likely, if it starts in the middle of 2022, will likely, it will run into 2023 as well. So construction in 22 and 23. I'll just point out one other thing that's not on here. Our first public meeting to sort of reintroduce the project to the public, that this is happening and there's funding and we have a schedule now, is planned for sometime April-ish, so probably late April. And we would want to have had some of these introductory discussions with property owners by that time. And then I also have on the screen here that there is a project website for this phase that's now up and running. Sorry. And that is available for people to use. So that is all we had. I'm gonna try to mute my phone, sorry. I guess, you know, some of our questions for tonight were really about process and what this committee is interested in, making sure we don't miss a step. As I mentioned, we are moving pretty fast in this first, you know, setting the footprint, but we do have time as we work through environmental documentation and some of Jamie's processes. So, you know, we're certainly interested in anything you've seen tonight and questions you have, and then understanding when you'd like to see us again.
I had a question just in general on, and it doesn't really relate to anything specific, excuse me, here. Trying to figure out the wisdom of having Highway 41 down to one lane going through town. And I'm guessing that you have nothing to do with that decision to do that, but any thoughts on what that thought process was?
Yeah, I can. I was involved in the phase where we came up with that design. You know, really it's a little bit counterintuitive because it feels like you're losing something. You know, there's two lanes in each direction today. But what we don't have today are, you know, dedicated turn lanes for people to safely get into a turn lane and out of the through lane for traffic. So in terms of moving traffic, you get just as much capacity as you do with the what we call a 4-lane or divided design that we had before, because you have left and right turn lanes in each of these directions. So it really, you know, capacity wise, it flows very well. We still have the same access at the intersections that are there today. But it really, where we really see the gains are the pedestrian environment. You know, that the parking was definitely a trade-off here, that we would have loved to try to fit parking on here as well. But that was sort of a trade-off of having parking off street and behind buildings so that we can have a safer and more inviting pedestrian environment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Greg, I don't know how much speed comes into this. You mentioned it a couple times, but I live close to this intersection. Man, coming northbound on 41, people barrel through that, blow that light regularly. I sit there, head down Chaska Boulevard, shaking my head, waiting for something to happen. If this helps improve safety, I think that'd be great. It is a dangerous intersection, in my opinion.
Any other general project questions? Otherwise, I know we have a couple questions for you all too. So I'll just pause for any other general questions.
No, just from a process for the Preservation Commission, will we be engaged along the way if you start getting the sites that seem like there may be history-related concerns and engaging us and asking questions? It looks like it's minimal, but how will you engage us in the future if necessary? Yeah,
Jamie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, you know, something that we had wanted to chat with the HPC about. I believe that we would be able to make the findings of that historic properties review accessible to you all, and we can certainly, you know, make that report available for your review and discussion, and we can come before you again following that review period and discuss the findings of that, and if you have any, you know, additional recommendations or concerns that you think may or may not have been addressed in that study.
Thanks. If anyone, no more questions from the commission, Angie and Jamie, you want to try your questions?
Yeah, and Jamie, do you want to go first?
Sure. So in terms of kind of thinking specifically about that property at 210 North Chestnut, knowing that it's a locally designated historic property, if in our review, sort of in the federal purview, if it's not determined to be eligible from the register, that proposed modification to the staircase wouldn't be a concern sort of in the Section 106 terms and from the federal and state process. But for you all, what does that have potential ramifications, or do we need to go through different processes at the local level to accommodate that type of modification, given that it is a local historic designation?
Oh. I can probably best answer that question on behalf of the HPC, but with any exterior changes happening to a locally designated resource, depending on what the change is, kind of informs what process would need to occur with the HPC involved. Typically, if it's, I say this very generally, typically if it's a non-historic piece that's being removed, we don't typically involve the HPC, but if it does significantly change kind of the storefront or the facade in any way, we do want them to be informed of that. So I guess it probably depends on what's changing, what's being removed, or what's being added, that we would typically would want the HPC to take a look at, just to make sure there's nothing that would be a ramification to that local resource.
Yeah,
I was just going to say, you know, usually you'll start discussion with me on that, and then I kind of make that determination if we need to bring the HPC in.
Could you clarify for me? I'm sorry if I didn't understand this. I know where that stairway is. there's going to be a walkway from the street to the back with there, you know, where is that, this picture? Yeah, could you kind of, yeah, where is this walkway going to go? Where's it going to connect?
Correct. So the thought was without parking on 41 any longer, and having parking, you know, somewhere behind on the block, it'd be great to have a sidewalk connection back, you know, to people that park their cars, and if they want to get out to 41, as well as people just walking on 41, if there is this Paseo sort of alley improvements, or as I mentioned, some of these businesses have rear entries, just another way without having to go all the way around the block, seemed like a good opportunity to explore a connection. We would want to make sure any sidewalk is accessible, and we need a minimum of 4 feet to do that. So obviously we wouldn't be sneaking that in there today. So the thought is there a way to, you know, sort of elevate and relocate the stairway? So maybe the stairway still extends through here, but maybe it, you know, comes down behind the building somewhere. We can still accommodate that, but that opens up the free space. You can see there's some air conditioner units. I mean, it's not just a stairway. We've got some things to definitely work out there, but felt like it was worth exploring.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. I missed that. Got it.
Speaking of the parking, Steve Mueller, I have a question on the parking lots that are, looks like they're designed in on these 2 blocks to make up for what we lose on 41. Is that a project that's part of this project? Is that part of this project, or is that something the city of Chaska has to handle?
We are actively coordinating that right now to try to time it with this project. And ideally, perfect world, we'd like to see the parking go in before the 41 project, just so that, you know, that piece of it's already done. There's somewhere to park, especially during construction. That would also help. Like I said, we're actively talking with property owners to figure out, and not only are they willing, can we make this work? How does it work? And then designing it to try to be part of the project.
Okay, well, that was my concern, that it be done, like you said, before, or at least when the project's done.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's the capacity of the parking, his ballpark? It doesn't.
I know, I don't have the numbers right offhand, but I know it more than replaces what's being removed. Okay. So that was kind of the thing that made this all work, was we had to make sure we were at least replacing what was removed from 41.
Is that property all private property, or some of it Chaska's city property?
Some of it is private, and I believe, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, these have been moving around so much, I cannot remember if some of it is city owned or not. I know this up here is private.
Okay.
Can't quite remember off the top of my head.
So yeah, I can say maybe with, I mean, the other location that's called out in this slide, that one is publicly owned right now. I know that one is being kicked back and forth if it's even feasible, because, you know, there's a whole other project that still needs to happen on those 2 properties. But that one would be publicly owned land where that smaller blue area is. But mostly everything around it on that block, with the exception of the parking lot to the south of that, is privately owned.
Do you lose any handicap parking on that 41? I didn't know if there is any even. But I'm looking, saying if I've got mobility issues, I might have to walk quite a number of blocks to get where I wanted if I'm parking.
Well, there also would still be parking on the side streets. So, you know, there's parking around each of all of the side streets.
Okay, yeah. Got it. Nice, thank you.
So I'm hearing, Liz, we work through you with, especially like this property, local designation only, that will share the historic properties review back with Liz and share it with the community. What else? I guess I have a question. As we start working through design, as I mentioned, of the amenities, or we call it streetscape sometimes, sort of, you know, the extra space on the sidewalk that is, you know, how we had thought about this in the study phase was it not only adds, you know, some amenities or, you know, real plants and things to downtown, but it also acts as a buffer for people walking on the sidewalk from the moving traffic. As we work through those design details and figuring out exactly what and where, is that something that would come through this committee as well?
You know, I'm kind of wondering if, you know, the process that you're taking with kind of those pieces, if, you know, if you're doing like a work session or anything like that, or, you know, a collective opportunity for different commissions to be involved. I mean, that one's kind of a gray area in terms of, you know, the HPC getting involved in it, but it is certainly within, you know, historic districts. So if it's, you know, contained within that, then they typically do have some commentary on it. But I'm wondering, you know, are you still exploring ways of getting commentary towards that? Or I guess I have a question on how you're planning to process it.
Yeah, we ultimately we need to kind of draft a plan, a detailed plan and cost estimate, and assume we'll be working through that with city staff. Okay. But so I don't necessarily think we'll have like 3 or 4 options that we'll be looking for input on, but once we get a plan, we will want input on that. Okay.
Then I would say we would definitely want to share it with the HPC. So when it is available, then they can provide comments or anything towards that effect.
Yeah, that'd be great. And that also, you know, there with parking moving to areas off of the street, and things like regional trail and underpass. I mean, there will be a wayfinding or signage component too to that will, you know, kind of wrap all together and certainly bring back when the time's right. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay.
Jamie, do any of the other members have questions or comments related to this project? Otherwise, I think, you know, what we have laid out right now is that, you know, they're going to go through this study period and kind of wrap up that, I think you said end of or middle of April. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So we'll probably have something, you know, able to be distributed to this group by our May meeting date, to just inform you of kind of what happens with that study, what the conclusions were and so forth. And obviously if we have more questions or comments, we can provide those at that time, unless there's any other requests or, you know, things of information that you're hoping to get out of this process. This would be the time to provide those questions and comments now.
Good presentation.
Doesn't sound like there's any more additions. So I guess we'll just proceed forward as we've kind of laid it out, and then reconvene on, you know, where they get with the study and the information that is provided then. So.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie and Angie. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all of your
job
time.
Hearing and having a perspective on how long this takes from 2017, and it's really complicated. So a lot of people to keep happy here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, are we Liz, are we done with 6A officially
I
here?
believe so. So Jamie and Angie, you're welcome to hop off if you want, or feel free to stay on. But yeah, that completes 6A, unless there's any other comments from Jamie or Angie.
No, thanks for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Well, that moves us to item 6B. Liz, you've got the floor.
Perfect. So we just had one other piece that I wanted to bring to this meeting to have you guys take a look at, but not necessarily make a formal motion on or anything, because this is more of a just a helpful resource that's going to be distributed to the public of who, you know, wants it and needs this information. But essentially, our historical society, which includes Commissioner Mueller as well, have been working on this pamphlet for homeowners who specifically own Chaska brick homes or historically designated homes within the city. They wanted to be able to provide a resource that would be insightful to how to treat their residences as, you know, they're going through any type of remodeling or desired changes, anything like that. So it specifically deals with kind of the exterior realm of these buildings in town, just to give people an idea of, you know, what is constituted as a minor class of work, which essentially doesn't involve HPC approval. It still involves myself as the liaison of the Heritage Preservation Commission to be able to review these changes to historically designated homes, but it gives out a pretty clear list of what that is exactly. And then beyond that, you know, also listing out things that are outside of minor classes of work, which would constitute a different process, review process with the city and HPC. And along with that, they've pulled in a lot of very helpful points that were provided in our preservation manual that was created back in the early thousands. So just providing a document that is kind of a one-stop shop for homeowners that have these locally designated resources. So that hopefully by reading it, it gives them a clear idea of kind of how to approach these changes to their buildings. Steve, anything else to add since you worked pretty heavily on this?
Well, I think you've got it right. We kind of combined two things, the minor classes of work as they're described as a document that the Historical Society already had. I don't know if that came from you, Liz, or where it actually came from.
It was before my time, so it was done and completed before I got here, which was nice.
Right. So we had that to start with at the Historical Society, and then what we added in were the commentary and technical notes on just these minor classes of work. And like Liz said, that came from the Preservation Manual, Design Manual, which was way back in December of 2003, but still valuable information. And then the first page kind of explains to the homeowner exactly what they need to do if the work is other than minor, which is connect with Liz. And then if they don't have to, then they've got all these descriptions as well as commentary and notes to help them do the work and do it correct historically for Chaska.
Steve, how do homeowners receive this? Is it on property transfer, or is it mailed to all the historic homes each year?
That's what we have to figure out.
Oh.
It should probably be at the city and at the Historical Society, both. Both will get contacted by people that own historical properties. So
it's a nice piece of work. When I read it, I didn't realize you were on both of the commissions, Steve. There could be some gray area where a homeowner could interpret something, you know, that maybe the HPC should weigh in on. Do you have an idea how the ebb and flow like if they have doubts or not. Is a lot of it, some of this seem like it's someone's judgment on how to do it or what to do. But how do they know when to engage the HPC?
Well, hopefully, if they do have a question, they will call Liz. They'll call the city. That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice document. I'm not an expert.
I think it's the first time we've had it, something like this, that directs people in the right direction, and then they kind of understand. And if they need a little help, they get some help. And when we make it, it won't be, big 8.5 by 11 sheets. It'll probably be more of a pamphlet, folded pamphlet, smaller.
Nice work.
But even though it has quite a few pages.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Or mine was just the give and take between the property owner and us to make sure someone, reads it one way and says, yeah, I can paint that green because I think connects with the heritage of the town or something. They may have a different view than the commission does. But that can always.
There are notes on that, technical notes.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone have questions for us on this? It's pretty neat.
No, it's a really comprehensive document. It's quite impressive.
Thanks for sending out early, Liz.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm not an expert in stucco or pointing, but I got the point, so to speak.
Yeah, it's very nice that we could work together on a project finally, between HPC and the Historical Society. That was the idea, and this is certainly a good one.
Yep.
Any other feedback you want from us, Liz? Or
nope. I just think it's important to keep you informed of the work that the Historical Society did, and just allow you to know that we have this resource out there. Say someone who has questions on how to treat their properties, they can always look to that. But it also informs if there's more questions or they need clarity on the type of the work that they're doing. If it involves a certain process, then they know who to contact. So just wanted to make sure you guys got some eyes on this, because it is very relevant to the work that you guys do. So just know that it's out there, and it's going to be a great resource for homeowners who have historical homes here in Chaska.
We'll let you know too if it's going to be distributed some way other than through the city or the Historical Society.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow you kind of like to see it tied to real estate too, so that if people are purchasing historic properties, that they definitely have one in hand.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't get it. So I painted everything pink. Good work. Thank you. Thank you. Well, if there's nothing else on this, Liz, or are we all set?
Nope.
Good.
Nope.
Good. That moves us on to item 8. There are no consent or action items this evening for us to review. So we'll go around the table and see if anyone has any other business they'd like to discuss. Commissioner Scott, anything else on your mind you'd like to discuss tonight?
No, I'm pretty good.
Okay. Commissioner Christine?
Nope, I'm good.
Commissioner Steve?
I don't. I was just looking at the notes. I thought we had something at the last meeting about looking at additional historic properties potentially in Chaska.
We'll have to circle back on that in adding other historical or non-historical resources to the list. So I'll make a note of that. We'll have to circle back on that and start the discussion over on kind of how we want to approach that.
Is there a list of potential properties that?
I'd have to look back and see if there was any older lists. I know, we've always talked about expanding, but I don't know, at least from my time here, we haven't put a formal list together. But I know it's been looked at in the past. So I want to see if there's maybe a list already curated and something we could work off of, essentially.
I thought there was a list in one of our guidebooks that was done within the last 20 years that listed buildings by types. At the end of each chapter, there was a list to be considered. Some of them have been designated, but I think some of those have not been designated.
Okay. Yeah, let me do some research and see what I can find, and then obviously reconvene on that once I have some information prepared.
Great. Commissioner James, any other business you'd like to bring up?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Commissioner Gregg?
No, just compliments on both presentations. They were well done, and it's nice to have that much detail in advance so you can understand it and ask hopefully reasonable questions.
Yeah, it kind of prods me to get to some of the more of the other council meetings and commission meetings to hear how it's being talked about and planning and all that. So I got to start looking at those agendas.
Thanks, Liz, for the extra week.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to do that as well as possible in advance of a larger project, but I can't promise being able to do that every meeting. That one, fortunately, we got several weeks before I sent it out, so there was some leeway time to send it out to you guys. So I'll do my best.
Don't spoil us every time. Well, I don't have any other issues for discussion. Liz, do you have any other business?
I do not. Nope.
Wow.
Nope.
Wow. Well, if we asked everyone, yep, we got everyone. Well, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Any nays? Great. That motion passes to end our meeting at 8:07 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you again. And next time we speak, the flowers will be up and it'll be light till 9 o'clock. And what else can you do?
You're so optimistic.
Yeah,
Maybe even in person one of these times too. So
Yeah.
That would be cool.
We're getting there. Well, everyone take care and have a good night, and we'll be in touch real soon.
And thank you, Liz, for all your
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Liz.
Thank you.
Right.